Most people have no idea how relieved a man feels when he finally steps outside that old cultural script that says he needs a woman to be happy. It's like taking off a backpack you didn't realize weighed 50 kilos. For generations, men were told, directly or indirectly, that having a woman was the stamp of being a real adult. That if you were single, something was missing, something was wrong, something needed fixing. But once a man actually pauses long enough to think for himself, he realizes the truth doesn't match the old story at all. The truth is that a lot of men are happier on their own than they ever were trying to mold their lives around a woman's moods, expectations, or approval. And in today's world, that gap between the myth and the reality has become impossible to ignore. Just walking up to a woman now carries more risk than reward. A harmless hello can turn into a TikTok joke, an accusation, or some dramatic misunderstanding that lives online forever. A generation ago, you might get rejected, maybe told to get lost, but that was it. Today, the cost is your name, your reputation, your job, your peace of mind. So ask yourself, what sane man volunteers for that? When the risk is sky high and the reward barely exists, men are doing the rational thing. They're opting out, and they're discovering that life on their own isn't just good enough. It's often far better than what they were told to expect if they had a woman. Some people don't want to hear that. They don't want to admit that the traditional arrangement doesn't make sense anymore. But look around. Everything in the modern world pushes men to walk carefully, talk carefully, behave carefully, while women get praised for speaking their truth, even when it's unfair or outright hostile. And that imbalance is taking a toll. Men are tired of being told that wanting boundaries makes them insecure, that having preferences makes them sexist, that protecting their peace makes them weak. Trying to date in this environment feels like walking through a minefield while being blamed for the explosions. So men pull back, they choose their own path, and in doing so, they're finally giving themselves permission to breathe. A lot of men still feel guilty admitting this. They've been raised on the idea that they're incomplete without a partner. They hear the old message in the back of their mind, you can't be happy alone. But that message was never about men's happiness. It was about keeping society's machinery running. Family, labor, stability, things that required men to sacrifice their freedom for someone else's comfort. And the strange thing is, men believed it for so long that many still feel guilty when they step back and ask, what if my life belongs to me? But once they do, things shift. Once they stop seeing singlehood as a failure and start seeing it as a chance to grow, to explore, to live without compromise, something inside them loosens. They stop apologizing for existing without a ring on their finger. And look, this isn't about hating women. It's about understanding cost and consequence. A relationship with a woman today isn't what it used to be. Women are more emotional, more reactive, more conditioned to distrust men than ever before. And men, by contrast, are simple creatures. They say what they mean, they want peace, and they don't thrive in chaos. Trying to merge those two realities is hard work. Harder now than any generation before us. Even men who are happily married will tell you it's not a walk in the park. It's constant compromise, constant emotional labor, constant navigation of someone else's inner storms. And most men aren't even allowed to say that without being shamed for it. But here's the important part. Being single doesn't mean you're lacking anything. It doesn't make you half a person. It doesn't make you incomplete. It simply means you've chosen a different route, one with fewer burdens, fewer emotional landmines, and far more room for personal freedom. Women are one possible part of a man's life, not the center of it. And once a man understands that, once he stops treating partnership as a mandatory step and starts treating it as an optional choice, he realizes something powerful. He was never missing anything. He just didn't know he could live differently. And that realization leads us right into the deeper question. If society is so tilted and relationships have become so unstable, what else are men waking up to? Because the next layer takes us straight into how unfair the playing field really is. When you look around honestly, you start to see how deeply this world has tilted against men, especially when it comes to relationships. Society loves to pretend that single men are somehow incomplete or immature, while women get applauded for focusing on themselves. A man stays single and he's labeled lonely, broken, or incapable. A woman stays single and she's called empowered, independent, enlightened. And that double standard doesn't just sit on the surface. It cuts right through how men view themselves. It's the quiet pressure in the background that keeps a lot of men from ever questioning the old script. But once you see the bias clearly, the illusion falls apart. Because nothing in reality supports the idea that men need marriage to be whole. And let's be blunt, women today can openly express hatred toward men without any social consequence. You hear things like, "Men are trash," "We don't need men," "All men should disappear," and people laugh, clap, or agree. But imagine reversing that. Imagine a man casually saying something equally hateful about any protected group. He'd be fired, banned, dragged through the mud. That tells you everything you need to know about the environment men are operating in. When one side can throw punches freely and the other side is punished for simply protecting itself, you don't have a partnership, you have a trap. That same bias shows up in family court. You don't even have to be married to know how it works. The moment a man enters that system, he's already presumed guilty, irresponsible, or disposable. Men lose custody at staggering rates, even when they're the stable parent. Their money, time, and sanity get sliced apart in the name of equity. And society nods along like this is normal. So of course men hesitate. Of course they're thinking twice about tying their future to someone who can legally dismantle their life with a signature. When you combine emotional risk, social risk, and legal risk, the cost of marriage starts looking less like commitment and more like gambling with loaded dice. But there's another layer to this, one that hits deeper. Many men were raised by mothers who, despite loving their children, didn't have the emotional bandwidth to nurture them the way boys needed. Think of Generation X, for example. Their parents weren't coddling them. They weren't hovering over every emotion. Most boys grew up figuring out life on their own. And whether they knew it or not, they carried a hunger for comfort, for acceptance, for warmth into adulthood. So naturally, men ended up chasing women partly because they were chasing the nurturing they never received. It wasn't love, it was emotional compensation. And what happens when you build a major life decision on an old wound? You make choices that aren't grounded in what's best for you. The speaker even admits this himself, getting married young because he thought it was the right thing to do, the responsible thing to do, the thing that would give his child stability. And while the intention was noble, the reality was different. If he had known then what he knows now, he wouldn't have rushed into marriage at all. That honesty matters, because it's not coming from bitterness, it's coming from experience. A man can love his children and still recognize that marriage didn't serve him. Those things aren't mutually exclusive, but most men never even allow themselves to think that way. They were told marriage is part of life, a box you're supposed to check, no questions asked. And yet, when you look at history, the whole idea of men spending every day side by side with one woman for decades doesn't even align with how men lived for thousands of years. Men were hunters, travelers, explorers. They spent weeks away from home on hunts or expeditions. Their sense of freedom wasn't a luxury, it was their default state. The idea of settling down permanently under one roof, matching every mood and rhythm with a woman's emotional world, that's not ancient male nature. That's a relatively modern cultural invention. No wonder so many men feel suffocated by it. They were never designed to live like that. But here's the really interesting part. Once men start looking at relationships through this historical and social lens, they begin asking questions they've never dared to ask before. Questions like, if marriage is supposed to be the path to happiness, why is everyone who's in it exhausted? Or, if being single is supposedly sad, why do I feel more peaceful than my married friends? Those questions don't destroy the old paradigm. They reveal that it was already cracked. And those cracks lead us to the next truth, one that rarely gets talked about out loud. When you strip away social pressure, financial burden, emotional chaos, and legal risks, single men are not just fine. They're doing better than anyone wants to admit. Once you peel back the social pressure and look at the reality of men's lives today, a pattern shows up that almost nobody wants to admit. Single men are thriving in ways married men simply can't, and it starts with the most obvious point: money. When a man is on his own, his financial life becomes unbelievably straightforward. He knows exactly where his money goes. He sets his own priorities. He doesn't have to negotiate over spending habits, decor obsessions, impulse purchases, or lifestyle upgrades he never asked for. He isn't carrying someone else's debt, fears, unbeers, desires, or financial chaos on his back. And he's not funding a future that might not include him. Studies consistently show that single men are wealthier, save more, and accumulate assets faster than their married counterparts. And it's not complicated to understand why. Freedom is cheaper. Responsibility is expensive. Think about it. No preschool fees that cost thousands per month, no college tuition that can climb toward $500,000, no constant expenses that come from maintaining a household built around someone else's needs. When you're single, money becomes a tool for building your life, not patching holes in someone else's dream. You can reinvest, save, travel, upgrade your environment, pursue a project, whatever you want. And the peace that comes from that kind of control is something married men often envy in silence. Many of them will never say it out loud, but you can hear it in their voice when they talk about bills, stress, and the endless list of sacrifices they're expected to make for the sake of family stability. Meanwhile, single men quietly build lives that are stable not because they must, but because they choose to. And finances aren't the only place where single men outperform. Look at physical health. Talk to any trainer, doctor, or even a casual gym regular, and they'll tell you the same thing. Single men show up. They take care of themselves. They train more consistently. They maintain their appearance because they want to, not because someone nags them about it. Married men, especially unhappy ones, often let go of their health. They fall into routines, obligations, exhaustion, and emotional drain that strip away their drive. They get softer, sluggish, stressed out, and more prone to heart issues, strokes, and chronic fatigue. There's a reason many married men joke about dad bods, but behind the joke is a quiet truth. Stress ages you. Single men don't carry that same load, and because of that, they tend to look younger, feel stronger, and stay sharper longer. Psychologically, the gap widens even more. A single man isn't performing for anyone. He isn't living up to someone else's emotional expectations, trying to decode someone else's moods, or sacrificing his peace to keep a relationship functioning. He develops a sense of self-determination, resilience, and emotional independence that married men rarely get the chance to build. He grows because he has the time and the space to grow. He learns himself because his energy isn't drained trying to maintain harmony with someone emotionally unpredictable. And this stability creates something most people underestimate: genuine mental health, and it shows up in everyday life. Single men have more hobbies, more personal interests, more freedom to explore passions without guilt. They read more, they travel more, they learn new skills. Not because they're escaping anything, but because they're not restricted by anything. Their lives have room, and that room becomes a source of joy. Then there's the social side of things. A married man's social circle shrinks dramatically over time. He becomes isolated without even noticing it, relying on one person to fill every emotional role: friend, therapist, companion, motivational support, entertainment, comfort. No one, man or woman, can fill all those roles without burning out. But single men, they maintain friendships, strong ones, deep ones. The kind that add balance, humor, support, and perspective. They aren't boxed into a routine where every spare minute must be accounted for. They're part of communities, groups, circles, and that makes them emotionally richer than many married men who live in quiet isolation. And when you put all of these pieces together, financial freedom, physical health, mental stability, social connection, you start to see why single men aren't just getting by. They're building lives that are stable, fulfilling, and internally driven. They're not being dragged from obligation to obligation. They're not being drained by constant emotional tension. They're not living under the pressure of expectations they never agreed to. But the most powerful part of all this is what it unlocks next. Because once a man realizes he's not missing anything by staying single, he starts asking a bigger question. If freedom gives me this much, what else is possible? And that question takes us straight into the deeper truth about living life on your own terms, the kind of freedom most men don't even realize they've been craving since they were boys. When you think back to being a boy, you probably remember that itch for freedom, that deep, impatient urge to grow up so you could finally do what you wanted, when you wanted, without anyone hovering over your every move. Every kid has that dream. You and your friends probably talked about it too, imagining all the adventures you'd have once nobody could tell you no. But somewhere along the way, a strange thing happened. You grew up, and instead of gaining freedom, a lot of men handed it right back. This time not to parents, but to a relationship. It's almost ironic. Men spend their childhood wishing for independence and then voluntarily put themselves under the emotional weight and constant scrutiny of a woman as adults. When you look at it clearly, it makes you wonder why so many men do it without question. And part of the answer is fear. Not fear of women, fear of the unknown, fear of standing alone, fear of building a life from scratch on your own terms. Most men don't realize how capable they actually are because they've never tested their full potential. They underestimate themselves the same way a caged animal forgets how strong it is. But once a man steps outside the expectation that he must have a partner, he starts discovering what he can actually do. He realizes how much energy he has, how many interests he never explored, how many experiences he postponed because he was too busy managing a relationship. It's like waking up after years of being half asleep. And that's the beauty of being single. Time and space open up in ways married men can't imagine. You can travel on a whim. You can pick up hobbies without justifying them. You can move cities, change careers, chase opportunities, or experiment without asking permission. You're not tied down to responsibilities that drain you or commitments that don't serve you. It's like getting access to the full map of life instead of being stuck in one small corner of it. For a lot of men, this is the first time they actually get to meet themselves. Not the version of them shaped by someone else, but the real version they never had breathing room to discover. And let's be clear, being single doesn't mean being alone. You can still have romantic experiences, companionship, intimacy, whatever you want, without sacrificing your freedom. The key difference is that you're choosing those experiences, not binding yourself to them. You can enjoy the presence of a woman without turning your life upside down for her. You can explore connection without wrapping your entire identity around someone else's needs. That's the part no one tells men. Staying single doesn't cut you off from women. It simply prevents women from becoming the center of your life. Socially, single men also remain far more connected. Married men often become dependent on one person for all emotional needs, while single men maintain friendships, community, and strong social networks. That's where emotional balance comes from. A man with multiple secure bonds, friends, brothers, colleagues, doesn't crumble under pressure the way a man does when one relationship becomes his entire world. That balance isn't something you can buy or inherit. It's something you build when you're not consumed trying to fix someone else's chaos. And the more you embrace that freedom, the more ridiculous societal pressure starts to look. Why hand over your time, money, health, and peace of mind just because it's considered the normal thing to do? Why give up adventure, personal growth, financial stability, emotional independence, and open-ended potential just to fit into a script that wasn't designed for you in the first place? If anything, the way society treats men today makes staying single not just a reasonable choice, but a smart one. And who knows, maybe one day things will even out. Maybe one day men will be valued again, and relationships will feel safe, fair, and balanced. But that day isn't today, so don't rush into something just because everyone else is doing it. Everyone is jumping off the bridge has never been a good reason to jump with them. Your life doesn't become meaningful because you follow a template. It becomes meaningful when you choose it intentionally. If you're single right now, don't see it as a gap or a failure. See it for what it is, a chance to live the life you once dreamed about as a boy, full of possibility, movement, excitement, and freedom. At the end of the day, happiness is something you decide, not society, not tradition, not someone else's expectations. If your life is unfolding in a direction that keeps you healthy, ambitious, peaceful, and free, don't apologize for it. Enjoy it, build on it, live it fully. And if the modern dating landscape feels impossible, let that be your advantage, not your burden. All right, that's all I've got for you today. If you enjoyed this, hit like, subscribe, and remember, stay healthy. And if you can, stay single.